Hi guys, it's Grandpa. We're going to start the next chapter today. It's called Chapter 7, Home Again. And at the top of the page it looks like this. It says Chapter 7. At the bottom of the page, this page says 56. So this must be page 57. Poppy and her father did not talk on the long way home. Only occasionally did she say, "Watch the puddle, Papa," or "Won't be long now," and that was about all. Lungwort, walking with his head down, his eyes glued to his feet, kept uttering sighs. Now and then he reached up to touch his hat, just to be sure it was still there. Once, after stealing a look at Poppy, a look that she caught, did he let out something that sounded like a groan. Poppy was fearful of asking her father the questions that she kept asking herself. If Mr. Oacax refused permission for the move, and he had, and if there was not enough food, and her father had said that that was true, what was the family supposed to do? Would some of them have to forage to distant places, out in the open? That meant they'd be at the mercy of Mr. Oacax. That would be a complete calamity. Calamity means a terrible thing. Poppy peeked again at Ragweed's earring. She kept asking herself why she had ever gone up onto the hill with Ragweed without asking for permission. She knew better than that. Look at all the trouble she had caused. Just then she hated herself for having loved Ragweed. But just to think that thought made her heart ache. And here's a picture of Poppy and Lungwort trudging through the rain and the water, going back home. Rain was still falling when they reached Grey House. Both mice were now soaked and exhausted. The once white flag was now trailing in the mud. A large number of mice were milling around on the porch, waiting for expected good news. Sure enough, when Poppy and Lungwort appeared, a cheer went up from the crowd. The sound brought Lungwort to a dead halt. The old mouse stared blankly at the rows of eager faces. A second cheer began, but then faded away as the onlookers sensed something was wrong. Silent and grim-faced, eyes averted, means his eyes were turned away, Lungwort painfully climbed the Grey House steps. Alarmed into silence, the rest of the mice backed away to let him pass. Poppy saw her mother break through the crowd. "Lungwort!" she cried. "Oh, my dear, what happened?" Lungwort lifted up sad eyes. Without a word, he continued on into the house, retreating into his boot, and then drawing the curtain behind him. For a moment, sweet Cicely stared after her husband. Then she, too, dashed into the boot after him. Only then did the other mice even notice Poppy. She had been standing there all alone, quite ignored. Now they were surrounding her and pelting her with questions. "What happened? Is something the matter? What's the matter with Lungwort? So what did Mr. Oacax say?" Poppy, not sure how to reply, remained silent. Finally, she held up a paw, which was her father's manner. The mice responded as they always did. They grew quiet. Swallowing hard, Poppy said, "Mr. Oacax refused permission for anybody to move." Like air escaping from a balloon, there was a collective gasp from the crowd. But a torrent of questions followed. What did Mr. Oacax say? Didn't Lungwort explain? What are we supposed to do now? Did the owl give any reason? Poppy lifted a paw again. Once the crowd had stilled, she said softly, Mr. Okak said that it was because Ragweed and I didn't ask for permission to go to Bannock Hill. She hoped for a chorus, or at least one mouse, who would say, That's not fair, or That's absurd. But no such word was spoken. Alarmed, Poppy looked around. Some eyes avoided hers. Others showed sorrow. Quite a few darted angry glares at her. You'll have to excuse me now, she murmured, quite shaken. I need to get myself dry. A narrow passage was made for her to pass. As she entered the house, she felt a nudge from behind. Alarmed, she jumped. It was her cousin Basil. Psst, this way, he whispered. He led her into an isolated room. Here, dry yourself, he said. I'll go get you something hot. Placing Ragweed's earring to one side, Poppy began licking her fur dry. By the time she was done, Basil returned with an acorn of steaming mashed rye. Despite her upset, Poppy ate ravenously. That means she was hungry and she wolfed it down. Grateful for the warmth that seeped through her body. Basil listened intently as Poppy told him about the meeting with Mr. Okax. Oh, and look what I found. She held up Ragweed's earring. Basil looked at it carefully. Where was it? Sticking out of one of Mr. Okax's pellets. Ooh, makes me sick, he muttered. After a while he asked, So, Poppy, what's going to happen next? Poppy sighed. I thought it would have been impossible to feel worse than I did when Ragweed died, but I was wrong. This is worse. So many of us will suffer, and guess who's being blamed? Me. Wearily, Poppy made her way to the attic. She just wanted to be alone. Amid all of Farmer Lamont's clutter, she had come across a tin can a while ago that was shaped like a house. Log Cabin Syrup, the label read. After cleaning the inside to a shiny newness and lining it with her favorite old magazines, Poppy considered it to be her room. Now she patted down a wad of filmy lace, which was her pillow. She crept under a blanket, which was a crocheted doily. Curling up into a tight ball, she tucked in her paws and wrapped her tail around her, tucking its tip right below her nose. Never had she ever felt so worn out. Even so, she could not sleep. She kept hearing Mr. Okax say he was refusing permission for family members to move because she and Ragweed, had not asked him if they could go up onto Bannock Hill. Then, too, there was his hint that he would change his mind if she were to sacrifice herself. She was glad that she had not mentioned that to her family, rather suspecting that some of them would have actually urged her to do it. The mere hint of such a thing gave Poppy the horrors. She drew herself into a tighter ball. Harder to deal with was her own inner voice. It kept insisting that what if what she and Ragweed had done was the reason for keeping others from moving and being safe? Then maybe she should sacrifice herself. A tear trickled down her face, rolled onto the end of a whisker, and then dropped into her pillow. Oh, she thought, if only Ragweed were here. He'd have something to say. But what? She asked, trying to cheer herself up. Most likely a question, a backward one, just like the time he asked Lungwort how Mr. Oakax could confuse a huge porcupine for a small deer mouse. Even as she thought about Ragweed's asking, Poppy realized that her father had never really given her an answer. She wondered why. Poppy forced herself back to her problem. Mr. Oakax said he was refusing permission because of something that she and Ragweed had done. How would Ragweed have turned that around? Poppy could just almost hear it. Ragweed would have said, "Well, what did refusing permission allow Mr. Oakax to do?" In asking herself that question, because it lifted some of the burden from her, gave Poppy a touch of encouragement. Well then, what did refusing permission allow Mr. Oakax to do? Poppy tried to remember exactly what had occurred when her father finally came to his point and requested permission for the move. Slowly but clearly it came back to her. When Lungwort had asked the question, Mr. Oakax became flustered. Means he was confused. He seemed unsure about something. Something connected with the new house. That is, he didn't ask Lungwort about the move. He asked if he had ever been to new house. In fact, he actually asked that question twice. Or was it 3 times? The point was, the moment Lungwort said he had never been to new house, that's when Mr. Oakax had said no. But it was not, Poppy recalled. No, you can't move. Rather, it was, no, you cannot move to new house. Well then, what did refusing permission allow Mr. Oakax to do? It allowed him to keep the mice away from new house. Poppy sat up. Was it possible that there was something there at new house, that Mr. Oakax wanted to keep hidden from them? Was that the real reason for his refusal? The idea so excited Poppy that she felt like rushing downstairs to tell Lungwort. She started to get up, only to stop. No, if she had hit upon the real reason for Mr. Oakax's refusal, there was just one thing that she could do to prove it. She'd have to go to new house and see what was there. And she could hardly ask Mr. Oakax permission to do that. I don't care, Poppy said aloud, making a fist. I'll do it. I will. I don't care, Poppy said aloud. I'll do it, I will. With a sigh of exhaustion, Poppy finally fell asleep. But it was not a restful sleep. She kept dreaming that she was lost. Worse yet, no matter where she turned for help, she saw only eyes. Mr. Oakax's eyes. And they were always just above and just behind her. And that's the end of the chapter. And we're going to quit there for today. Hope you're enjoying the book. I am. Talk to you later. Bye.